All right. So, first off, as always, thank you guys so much for joining for today's session. It is a continuation of last week's session. For any of you that didn't have a chance to join us last week, it was all about creating a business plan, but creating a business plan that was really built off of a big why. So, we're going to review some of the materials from that last session, as well as dig into some things a little bit deeper for you. Did anybody miss last week's session that's here right now? No, looks like everyone is here. Awesome. All right. Well, it's good to see you, Kat. Good to see you, Edie, Edgar, Brendan, and Luca. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you jumping in. All right. So let's go ahead and get this presentation up and running to guide us for today's class. Let's do that and that. So can everybody see this presentation at this time? Please give me a thumbs up, a drop in the chat if you could see this. Or an affirmative.
I don't see anything.
You guys don't see anything?
It's gone.
I see a gray
It
screen.
came up for a second.
Let's see what's going on here. So I take it you guys could see that. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's try this again. Oh, I know what it's doing. Sorry, bear with me. Didn't have this technical difficulty last time. Let's see. Is it gone again?
Yeah, it's gone.
How about now?
There you go. You're up. Good to go.
All right.
Yeah, it's good.
You guys can see my presentation, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, sorry. I just got to get through this. Awesome. All right, so we are today going to be talking about time management with the 411. So let's just go ahead and quickly review why we are meeting. We kind of discussed this at the beginning of last week's session where we understood that for the most part, just generally speaking, most successful businesses and entrepreneurs, what we see is that they are highly productive and they're highly profitable. However, it's not the productivity and profitability that necessarily we should be jumping to emulate. As we had mentioned last week, it's kind of a depiction of this graph here where we know that the most successful agents, underneath that surface of profit and productivity that we see, there's actually priority and purpose behind what they do and why they do it, right? So that's why we did a lot of activities that we'll discuss here in a minute. But we also understood that due to COVID-19, a lot of those plans, those priorities and purposes that you came into the year with might have been thrown off a little bit based on everything going on with the virus spreading as rampant as it has. We've seen that to our clients, it's increased unemployment. It's created fear and concern amongst our buyers and sellers. It has caused us to take precautions that we've never seen in our business before and experience changes as an industry. So as a result, there's just been a lot of things going on that might have thrown your business a little bit off course. And what we've realized here at Keller Williams VIP is that we need to help people get back on course by first off focusing on that priority and purpose. So here's what we had you guys do last week as a result of our conversation in class. We had you first off define for you what were your someday, 5-year, and 1-year personal goals. We know that upon you figuring out your personal goals, then you would be well informed on what your 1-year financial goals would be. From your 1-year financial goals, we showed you the Millionaire Real Estate Agent economic model and how you can use that to define your 1-year business goals. And then finally, once you've understood your business goals, how you can turn that into a 1-page business plan. So first off, I would love to pause for a minute before we jump into today's content and hear from those of you that completed these 4 items, what exactly happened as a result of you doing these activities over this last week? Who would like to share?
I think it gives you, it's kind of like keep your eye on the prize, gives you something to shoot for, and also helps you gauge really how you're doing. Because people ask, how's your business? Like, oh, it's pretty good. But is it, pretty good, or is it where it needs to be? I think it helps you gauge, if you are where you need to be. And if not, you can maybe look at your plan to see what needs to change.
Exactly. I think, Edie, to your point, it can make us maybe be comfortable, right? If it's not where it needs to be and we don't know what that end goal is, we can get comfortable. But by you knowing what that end goal is, and more importantly, why that end goal exists, keeps you hungry and striving for more. Thank you for sharing that, Edie. Who else? Who else would be willing to share what happened as a result of doing these activities? Let's hear from one more person.
I'll go.
Yeah, Brendan, talk to us.
Yeah, I think last week in the class, it really helped me realize how important time blocking is to your schedule, and making sure that you're doing the activities in that certain amount of time to get to where you want to be with your business. Your business is only going to go as far as the time you're willing to put into it, and really creating that special time and making sure nothing interrupts that time. I remember talking with you and James about, he won't even talk to anybody till after 1 p.m. because he spends those first 3 or 4 hours in the morning lead generating. And I think that was just an eye opener, keeping the time blocking going.
Yeah, that's actually what we're going to get a little bit more in depth with today, right? But you bring up such a good point, which is by the time you had gotten done with last week's activities, you now know what you need to do, right? The GPS showed you a list of responsibilities, or more importantly, strategies to implement into your business. And now you might have felt chaotic. So we're going to actually review that page here in a minute. But you have 15 strategies as a result of last week's activity that you need to now go and implement into your business. I had told you, some of you might at that point feel stressed, feel chaotic, feel disorganized, and how in the world am I going to get this done? So today is going to be about bringing order to that chaos and making sure that you don't pull your hair out. So let's go ahead and jump into some things. Here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about the idea of focusing on what matters most. We're going to do that through a couple of different conversations. The first of which is going to be understanding the 80-20 principle. So some of you might be familiar with it. Others of you might not have ever heard of the 80-20 principle. We're just going to make sure there's a baseline for everyone. We're going to talk about an activity called the Big Rocks. Many of you have also might have seen that, but there's actually a video to showcase it even better. But again, it's all about making sure that we have that priority down packed. Then we're going to talk about a concept that's out of a Keller Williams training called the 6 Personal Perspectives. And the concept is called moving from E to P. So again, it's just like last week. It's about making sure that we have a really strong foundation before we go into time management. And time management, once you figure out that foundation, the 2 things that we must focus on is breaking down your goals to as minute an activity as possible, and then time blocking for when those activities will occur. So let's go ahead and just jump right into a couple of things here, starting with focusing on what matters most. Now, there are a ton of rules that help us really understand this concept on focusing on what matters most. One of my favorites is something called the 80-20 principle, otherwise known as Pareto Principle. And where it comes from is there was actually an individual by the name of Vitali Pareto who had done some research in regards to the relation between wealth and income. And what he realized was that the 80% of the wealthy individuals within this English community in the 19th century was actually coming from about 20% of the population. A very significant amount of wealth was being created by 20% of the population. As he understood that principle, what he did was he was using that into other areas of life. And what's come to be born is what's called the Pareto Principle, which you'll see in many different concepts. In the world of real estate, how we've applied this concept is that 80% of your activities, 80% of your results will come from 20% of your activities. This right here gives you a little bit of a depiction of it. So what we really want to take away from this first idea here is only 20% of the activities is going to make up 80% of your results. By the time you had gotten done writing out your business page, you had 15 different strategies to go and implement. Keep this in mind. Within each of those strategies, you're going to have the most important activities required to be done. And then there's a whole slew of other ones that are really just going to be a bit of time fillers. The Pareto's principle, or the 80-20 principle, also works in the inverse, in that 80% of your activities will actually make up 20% of your results. So the first thing that we need to be asking ourselves there, as we move into time blocking our activities and really getting zoned in on what's most important in order for me to achieve my business objectives and the goals that I've set for myself, what are the 20% of activities that are going to get me the most results possible? Got to make sure that those get done first. Now, why don't more people do the 80-20 principle? Are there any ideas as to why more people don't use the 80-20 principle in their life that you guys can think of?
Maybe you like doing the other activities more, even though they don't get the same results.
Yeah. It's fun to do some of that 80% of activities that don't get you the 20%, right? Absolutely, Edie. Why else do you think?
The 20% might be a little bit harder.
I love that. Yeah, the 20% requires maybe a little bit more skill, a little bit more time, right? A little bit more knowledge or experience. Great suggestion there, Edgar. You know, I think it's, yeah, what'd you say, Paulette?
Lazy.
Laziness. I don't want to believe that any of you guys are lazy, but the fact of the matter is, it requires a little bit more willpower, right? To do that 20% of activities that will get you the 80% results. So I think all of you are spot on there. You know, if we had to boil it down, it's counterintuitive. We've been taught as humans that the harder you work, the more your results will become. The harder you put your effort in, and the more activity that you put into your day, the more results you could expect in return. What we found is actually not quite the case. What we found is that if you put your time into what matters most, you will get the most results possible. I think about an individual who wants to get really skilled at basketball, right? There's a reason why you see the really talented top of their game performers in the business. Typically, you'll notice those individuals have really zoned in on one or two things that their position requires of them. Why? It's because they follow the 80-20 principle. They realize that if they focus on what matters most, not ignoring everything else, but if I'm going to be the two guard, right? If I'm going to be the next Steph Curry, I'm going to focus on shooting and just shooting 80% of the time. Because I know that's what's going to get me the most results. I'm going to still understand how to dribble, how to pass, how to rebound, but the majority of my time, I'm going to focus on what matters most and what's going to get me the biggest return. Right? So it's not just about putting in as much effort and spending as much time as possible to get the most results possible. It's about spending it on what really matters most in order to achieve those goals that you've set for yourself. Now, this concept shows in many cases, one of which is in an activity called identifying your big rocks. How many of you have seen the big rocks activity before? Just drop it in the chat or go ahead and give me a verbal yes. All right. Well, then this might be an introduction for many of you. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a quick video here that's going to depict for you this idea of the big rocks. And what the big rocks tells you is, and many of you, this might resonate with when I describe this. You know, we have a business plan, a very specific strategies that we need to go and execute on in order to live out some of the goals that we've set for ourselves. And do me a favor, if any of you guys aren't talking, go ahead and mute yourself so that we can mitigate as much of the background noise as possible. Now, what the Big Rocks activity shows us is we tend to go into our day and we'll get sidetracked by a lot of little things that'll stop us and make us go and say, oh, I got to pivot and go and get these things done. And we put our time and our focus on a lot of those little things that we need to get done throughout the day. But we know that there are bigger things that we're going after. There are vacations we want to go on. There are things that we want to buy. We know there are bigger priorities in our day. And rather than get those things done first and foremost, we allow ourselves to take care of the little things to the point where it actually impacts our ability to take care of the big rocks. So I want to share this video to you guys, and please do me a favor, take a look at this video. Let me know if you could hear the audio, and let's go ahead and have a quick chat about the Big Rocks activity afterwards.
Your name is Elizabeth. You have a work life?
Yep.
Family life as well? Children?
Not yet.
Not yet. What's the nature of your work assignment?
I direct an international firm.
An international firm. So you really are interfacing with all kinds of people in the firm and outside the firm.
That's right.
You want a rich personal life and a rich family life. Do you ever feel like you get...
Oops. Well, let's try that again. Sorry about that.
Your name is?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. You have a work life?
I do.
Family life as well? Children?
Not yet.
Not yet. What's the nature of your work assignment?
I direct an international firm.
An international firm. So you really are interfacing with all rich personal life and rich family life. Do you ever feel like you get bogged down in the thick of thin things?
Yes.
Well, that might be analogous to all these little, small things that tend to fill our life. And they just little by little, they just accumulate. Now, your job, you can't go above this, is to get all those large rocks in the jar. Good luck. What's that one called?
Q2, planning, preparation.
Right. Planning, preparation, prevention, and empowerment. And the next rock she's putting in there is called relationships and family. You didn't look at that third rock you put in there. That's employment, some key employment issue, and then you put major projects here. I can't get it above there.
I haven't worked it yet.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's fair. That's called service, community, church. Do you ever feel like this?
Yes.
How many feel like this? By moving the little things around, you might squeeze in one more of those big major things. It's almost, wow, it's good. You know, if it doesn't fit, force it. Here's something that's called urgent and important. It's a quadrant 1 thing that is blindsiding you that your biggest client, you don't get back to that client now. You've given up your vacation and you have no special block of time just for yourself. I'll tell you what you can do if you want to. You can take a whole different approach. You have a totally fresh bowl. You can work out of a different paradigm altogether.
Well, then I'd rather put these in the bottom and then put a little pebble on top.
Employment.
Big opportunity.
Big opportunity.
Important and urgent. Block of time. Those young children keep looking at me. My husband's not here. No, I dumped these in there.
Okay.
You see, what the big rock activity shows us is you want to think of that bucket as the time that you have available, not just for your business, but in life. And those big rocks are the big activities and goals and aspirations that you've set for yourself and you've likely thought about over the last week. What we have to make sure that we're doing as we continue to talk about business planning and time management is that we're ensuring those big rocks are taken care of first and foremost. And we allow those distractions and other items or even little pieces that can get in the way to be to still be taken care of, but taken care of after the big rock activities. Again, we know the top performers, what they have is purpose and priority. What do you guys think of that video that we just showed?
It's a great video. Common sense.
Yeah, common sense, right? And yet we don't, we tend to still get distracted, right? Right, Alyssa?
Yeah, and a lot of practicality. Sometimes we overcomplicate things. And it's easy because there's so many courses. As I'm listening to this course, there's so many other courses popping online, you know? So I like to have the plan first. So that's why I logged on here and then do it instead of trying to do everything and then make a plan.
I can't tell you how many of these courses are those little rocks. Not that they're not important, but you bring up such a good point, Alyssa. It's when you have really clear purpose and priority, you can really then dictate what are the classes that I need to be plugging into. Huge, huge point to bring up. Any other thoughts that come to mind?
Yeah, I think it just really visualized what it looks like when you're looking at your schedule, and that's what it ends up being. Like you're like trying to force the things that you should have been, or you know, that are important to you into that time slot.
Exactly. Now we're starting to form an understanding, or at least get really clear on the importance of time blocking and time management. The last part that we're going to talk about to round out the bases of our foundation here is this concept of moving from E to P. You know, I see a lot of real estate agents that get into this business, and they get into business because they want to be entrepreneurs, right? They want to be entrepreneurs. And so that's how they run their business. They run with their business with a little bit of an entrepreneurial style. So let's talk about what that means. We look at entrepreneurs as individuals that come in with a natural ability, a natural talent, and they operate their business with that natural ability and talent in place. I'm going to put some of you guys on mute here for a minute. If you guys can do me a favor and just keep on monitoring your mute, that way I can make sure that we are mitigating that background noise. But anyways, we talk about this idea that entrepreneurs, what happens is they come in with their natural ability, and they really rely on that natural ability and talent to build their business up. Here's what we see time and again, though, is that unless they make the transition to a more purposeful style, they're going to have a ceiling to their achievement. So what does that ceiling of achievement really mean? Well, let me tell you guys. Your natural ability can only take you so far. You see, you start to go and do, and you feel this level of success because it came natural to you, and it's like, oh my God, I'm doing so great. But then all of a sudden, you just can't seem to grow. For many people, it's because they haven't really thought about the models or systems that they need to implement in order to break through that achievement ceiling. So what does it mean to move from E to P? Well, it's very simple here, right? It's when you start feeling that disappointment, that resignation, but then understanding that there are greener pastures if you would just make one specific change. That change is being all about not doing necessarily what comes naturally to you, but doing what comes unnaturally. And for most people, what comes unnaturally is the things that require a plan and a purpose. It is going and getting the right training and consulting that you need in order to break through that natural ceiling of achievement. So what we've talked about so far is the importance of getting your 80-20, following the 80-20 principle. Only 20% of your activity is going to get 80% of your results on that business plan. It's about understanding that the big rocks need to come first, and slowly but surely pour in the little rocks, but do that after you've taken care of your priorities. And also know that many of you up to this point might have been managing your business in a little bit of an entrepreneurial way. In order for you to break through your ceiling of achievement and actually live out the business plan that you all have set for yourselves, we need to be acting really, really purposeful. So now it's time for me to show you guys a tool that's going to help you with breaking down your goals and being really purposeful. So that tool, the tool that we talked about last week was the GPS, stood for goals, priorities, and strategies. What it did was it allowed you to map out your one goal for your business for the next 12 months, your 3 priorities, and then up to 5 strategies for each of those priorities. Here was an example. So you'll see here that with our goal being of holding 7 appointments a week, that what we needed to do for our big activities was focus on our database, our open houses, and building out our team. And within each of those priorities, there were very specific activities or strategies that we needed to implement in order to execute on that priority at a really high level. By the time you had gotten done with this activity, you might have felt a bit overwhelmed that now you needed to go and implement 15 different strategies into your business. Did anyone feel overwhelmed after doing this activity last week?
Oh, definitely.
Definitely. Anyone else?
I felt excited to like, and so it was overwhelming at the same time, like feeling of excitement and like purpose was very comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, that nervousness energy, you turned it into excitement, right? That there's now a plan available to you, right? Edgar, looks like you had unmuted yourself as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say once I looked at it, and I swear I must have erased things like over and over again. Just thinking, I think like overthinking was like the obstacle I ran into. Like, okay, I got to do this. Wait, go back, and then that's what it was like a little overwhelming. So I had to step back a little and be like, okay, what are the important things?
See, this is where I would give you permission to think really hard about it, right? Get really intentional about how you're going to build your business over the next 12 months. Erase, scratch out, put it back on there. Does that seem stupid? Okay, let me erase it and try something different here. But think through this, because this plan is going to inform the rest of your business and what you specifically need to be doing over the next 12 months. So let's talk about a tool here known as the 411. This tool is used to help you take this list of 15 different strategies and now bring order to that chaos. If I'm to look back here at the GPS, now I see 15 different to-do items and I'm like, oh my God, where do I begin? So now I'm going to walk you through how to use this tool, okay? How the tool is broken down, the 411 stands for 4 weeks, 1 month, 1 year. And how it works is, you're going to actually dictate your responsibilities and what you need to do by each of the segments in here. So we're going to start with your annual goals. Here are some things to think about when it comes to your annual goals. The first thing is you're going to want to set aside somewhere between 1 to 3 days per year to think about these goals. So over the course of the last week, I gave you guys, 7 days to think through these 1-year goals because there was a lot more to it. We don't want you to just map out, what am I going to do over the next year? There's a reason why we say up to 3 days for this, because it's a process so that you're actually emotionally attached to what you write down for your annual goals. Now, these annual goals, when you transpose it onto your 411, they should be written in terms of gauges rather than levers. So what do I mean by that? I want you guys to think about a car. On a car, you have gauges such as your speedometer, right? It's telling you how fast you're going. Your levers, such as your accelerator pedal, that is the lever of what you're doing in order to dictate what the gauge is saying. So your monthly goals that we're about to talk about in a minute here, those are the actual specific tools and things that you need to do in order to hit where your gauge is telling you you're at. So some of the gauges that you might be setting for yourself, the number of appointments that you're going to hold for the year, the number of closings that you're going to have, the amount of GCI you're going to earn, how much are you going to net, what is your database size going to be at the end of the year? These are gauges for the health of your business. And as we transition to your monthly and weekly goals, then we're going to start talking levers and specific things to do. So right now at this point, really, from your GPS, what we're going to take from your GPS is really the goal, or what you've put in the goal section there. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get a little bit more granular here. What I want you to do when you use this tool and start mapping out your monthly goals, first off, the thing to know is you're going to only think about the month that you're working in. So we're about to enter July. There couldn't be a better time for you to start implementing this tool into your business. You've already figured out what goals you want to set for yourself for the next 12 months. Go ahead and map those in the annual section or in the year section. Once you've mapped out those annual goals, though, here is my challenge to you. Forget about them. Don't think about how much money you're going to make. Don't think about how many appointments you're going to go on. Don't think about how many houses you're going to close. Put those aside and just lock them up for now. Because now what we're going to do, what we're going to think about and focus on with our monthly and weekly goals is solely the activities that we are going to implement, that upon implementing those will get us one step closer to our annual goals. You see, you don't have much control over the number of houses you're going to close. Would you agree or disagree? I agree, right? You don't have much control over the amount of money that you're going to make on a monthly or weekly basis. Would you agree or disagree? I agree.
Agree.
Right? I'm answering for all of you. What we do have control over are the very specific strategies that we mapped out on our GPS and answering the question, did you get it done? Is your business executing that at a high level? So in our monthly goals, this is where we'll leverage the strategies within our GPS to fill in our 411. So here's how mapping out your monthly goals should work. Somewhere between 1 to 3 hours per month, you're going to sit down and all you're going to think about is, for the month, what am I going to achieve? What am I going to achieve such that by doing it will keep us on pace with our annual goals? Now, again, focus on your method of achievement. Don't focus so much on, I'm going to get 6 appointments, but how are you going to achieve those 6 appointments this month? Does it require a certain amount of hours that you're going to cold call? A certain number of open houses that you're going to host? A certain number of seminars that you're going to hold online? It's all about answering the question of how are you going to get yourself in position to achieve your annual goals? Write down the key activities that will lead to those monthly goals. For many of you, we talked about, for everybody, one of your priorities in your business is your database. So for some of your monthly goals, set up your 8x8, set up your 36 to convert, set up your 19 to connect, set up your 12 touch plans. So set up your 8x8s to cement your relationships. Those are very specific strategies that you could be mapping out that I'm going to achieve over the month. Only focus on the month that you're in. So we're about to enter July. Only focus on July. Don't worry about August, September, October, and beyond. Now, best practice for you, so that way you're not spreading yourself too thin here and you're really making sure that you're focusing on the big rocks. Keep the number of goals in your monthly goals to 5 to 7. As the saying goes, you can't build Rome in a day, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. And that's where we're going to do this 1 month at a time. Now, Alyssa, it looks like you unmuted yourself. Do you have a question or a thought?
I wanted to ask you, like, post-licensing is coming up, and do you think it is, because we can't do open houses yet, so do you think we should go ahead and knock out those post-licensing, CE classes, continuing education and post-licensing classes right before we're able to hit the ground running with open houses? I do virtual open houses, but of course that's not going to be as effective as meeting people in person.
Yeah, I think, this is kind of a general question here. It doesn't just relate to today's training, but how I would respond to that is it's a yes and response. Right now, your business cannot afford not to be doing 2 hours of lead generation. Whatever that lead generation is, still nonetheless be doing 2 hours of lead generation. But I always do open houses. That's okay. Figure out something that you could do for 2 hours. There's a golden opportunity in real estate that's happening right now that if you do not take advantage of it, 90 days from now, you're going to really be kicking yourself in the tail that you didn't do it. So if you have to do your post-licensing, your CEs, yes, get those done, but let's just make sure that it's not getting in the way of those 2 hours of lead generation. That'd be my best answer to that.
Did you say 2 hours a week or 2 hours a day?
2 hours a day. 2 hours a day.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, 2 hours a day of lead generation.
Oh, that's not a problem. Deal. Can you also send us these slides when we're done with class?
1 billion %, yes. Edie, it looks like you had a thought as well.
No, I was just saying you did say week, but I knew what you meant, 2 hours a day. Yeah, the
Oh,
slides also. I would love a copy of these slides. Thank you.
absolutely. My apologies. Do not do 2 hours a week. Do 2 hours a day to all of you, please. All right. So now let's talk about the weekly goals. And there's going to be some really important things to clarify here. So now we're talking the bottom section of this tool. At this point, we've mapped out our annual goals and then we forgot them. We set it and forget it like a rotisserie chicken. Then we focus on the very specific activities and strategies that we're going to implement into our business on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. Now we need to say, okay, our monthly goals are going to inform our weekly goals. What from our month do we need to focus on and get nailed this week? And so here's how you do it. 30 minutes to an hour a week. My recommendation would probably be on a Sunday at some point. You are thinking about, what do I need to get done for the following week? Now, here's the first big rule of thumb. Do not go past the week that you're about to work in. Reflect on the week that you've completed and look forward to the week that you're about to work in. Beyond those other weeks, so if I'm about to fill in week 1, do not fill in weeks 2 through 4. Because like we had talked about, like we actually saw in that Franklin Covey video, there are little urgent and important matters that will pop up that might throw things off course a little bit, and we just have to be willing to pivot. When you map out all of your weeks, it's a little bit hard for you to do so. So only focus on 1 week at a time. Again, think actions or activities. What do you need to do to make sure you're on pace with your monthly goals and ultimately your annual goals? Here's another really, really important thing here. This is not a place for you to put a laundry list of to-do items. These are your must-dos or your have-to-dos, such that by not doing it, you feel a little bit like you let yourself down, because that's in fact what you're doing, especially if you continue to let those pile on. So what are the must-dos from your monthly goals that need to get done this week, such that by doing it will keep you on pace with your monthly and ultimately annual goals? My suggestion to you, so that way you can actually time block and keep yourself available for the things that will just turn its ugly head and say, hey, here's something to do. To keep yourself still focused on big rocks, keep it to 6 to 8 goals. Don't go past that. So we should have 6 to 8 goals per week, 1 week at a time. We should have 5 to 7 monthly goals 1 month at a time. And we should have 5 to 7 annual goals that we forget about, or at least we put it locked away for the rest of the year. And we just focus on 1 year at 1 month and 1 week at a time. Now,
Daniel, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, Alyssa. Thank you for the
You
question.
know how you get your 68 goals? Are those 68 goals specifically only for real estate? Because what if we have goals for that we have to accomplish and help our children accomplish, or something else? So is that included in that 68 goals, or is that only real estate goals?
Yes. So actually, it's amazing that you say that. And I promised to everyone else I did not pay Alyssa to ask these questions. So we do have a variation of the tool. It's actually the one that all of you are going to get in your email inbox. This variation of the tool, instead of it just looking like this, where it's one mapped out for a year, month, and weekly, in the year and monthly, it's actually going to have 4 different sections to it. So I want you to imagine 4 different columns. And it's actually for the 4 different areas in your life: your job, your business, your health, and your finances. So ideally, we're focusing on job goals. We're focusing on separately business goals. We're focusing on personal or health and fitness goals. And then last but not least, financial goals. And so from there is where you will likely have 6 to 8 goals for each of those to get accomplished. Hopefully that clears it up for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Now, the last thing here is here's the last big mistake that most agents will make when they operate their business with the 411 tool, is that they'll map out their 411, they'll have it on their desk, and then they'll just move on into their week. That's how the 411 quickly turns into a to-do list. Do not do that. There's one more step that you must take when it comes to completing the 411. That is immediately after writing out, for this week, what am I going to do? You got to open up something and fill it in. What's that something that I'm talking about, guys?
Your schedule.
Your schedule, your calendar, right? We need to go and time block. So for instance, let me go back to here. If you've mapped out for this week, I'm going to build out my 8x8 touch plan. I'm going to host 2 open houses. I'm going to call 100 neighbors around that open house, so on and so forth. Great. Now you've mapped out your 6 to 8 weekly goals. Immediately after doing that, open up your paper calendar or your Gmail calendar, whatever it is that you're using to inform yourself of your day-to-day. Time block when those items are going to happen and for how long. You see, all work expands to the time allowed. So if you give yourself the entire week to get all the activities done, now all of a sudden you have filled up all of your time, and you're going to take a lot longer than necessary to get certain activities done. Tell yourself, how long are you going to give yourself to get each of these activities done? Map it out and then make sure you stick to that schedule. Doing it this way will address one of the biggest problems that real estate agents face in this business. How many of you came into this business from a job, a job, where you had a boss? Go ahead and give me a drop in the chat or give me a yes.
Yes,
Yep.
I did.
Sounded like a few of you did. You see, when you come into this business, who's your boss?
Yourself.
Yeah, and how many of you treat yourself like your boss? Right?
Not as often as we need.
Yeah. I mean, think about this. How many of you, if you were to look back on your last month's work, maybe it wasn't this last month, but maybe there was a 30-day stretch when you really didn't give it your all. How many of you might fire yourself if you were your own employee in your business? There might be a couple of you that might consider that. Yeah, Paulette, thank you for being honest, right? There's some of you that might fire yourself if you really treated yourself like your own boss. But you see, there's a little bit of a challenge there, a little bit of a conflict there with you treating yourself like your own boss. Obviously, you're not going to fire yourself, because then how else are you going to make an income in this business? But there's a way to create a boss. And that boss starts with a C, ends with Allender. Does anybody want to take a guess at who your boss can be?
Yeah, it's a C Allender.
Yeah, your C Allender. That's funny. Your calendar, right? Allow your calendar, give your calendar the permission to be your boss, such that it's telling you what you need to be doing, when you need to be doing it, and why you need to be doing it. It addresses one of the biggest problems that real estate agents face in this business. Now, let's talk about some best practices for time blocking. I'm going to give you some best practices that I abide by myself. The first thing is to be purposeful about the items that you put on your calendar. Be really purposeful about it. Figure out, are these activities that have to get done, or are these just to-do items? Again, it comes back to, we want to make sure that we're only putting must-to-do items on our calendar. We also want to make sure that we're leaving space for the little rocks to be able to get done as well. So map out your must-dos. You don't need to map out your to-do items, but give yourself time when those things can get done, or the unexpected. Also be thoughtful about which activities need to be time blocked at which times. This is a really important one here. You know, how many of you, again, by a chat or by a quick verbal yes, have read the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller? This book?
No.
Okay.
But is it on audio?
It is on audio, and it is a book that I would highly recommend to all of you. The One Thing by Gary Keller with Jay Papasan. It also has a podcast that is incredible, hosted by Jeff Woods. What this book tells you about, one of the concepts, is about this idea of willpower. And here's what it says about willpower. Everyone has a finite amount of it per day. And when do you think you have your most willpower?
In the morning.
Yeah, at the start of your day, right? Before you've used it. But as you go through your day, as you go and cold call, as you go and door knock, as you go and host your open houses, as you jump into your database, as you get more activity done, it drains and drains away that willpower. So as you think about the activities that you need to get done this week and your time blocking for it, understand that your willpower will be at its most at the start of your day, and thus That is when the activities that could be most draining should be getting done. That's why we say block your lead generation to get done early. Don't do it for after 1 o'clock. After 1 o'clock, you filled your stomach up with pizza and you're done for the day. Or you're now looking forward to the items on your schedule that maybe are easier to get done. Get done with the hardest things early on. Be diligent about not allowing anyone or anything to steal your time you've dedicated to the activities on your calendar. You see, you're going to spend all this time mapping out and getting really intentional about how your day should look. And then somebody's going to come up to you and say, man, how was your weekend? And that is great. But it can get in the way and it could throw off your goals. And what's more important to you? Having that 5 to 10 minute conversation and throwing off potentially everything, or getting done those goals that you are now emotionally attached to, you thought about this past week, right? As a result, being diligent about not allowing people or things to steal time, you got to get really good at one word and one word only. What's that word, guys?
Consistency. Focus.
I like consistency. I like focus. I'll tell you the word that you need to get really used to saying is no, or yes and. Right? When you say yes to something, you say no to everything else, right? So when you say yes to a conversation or yes to an activity that might throw off your schedule, you're saying no to what you had put on there that you know was going to get you closer to achieving your monthly and annual goals. So just be really diligent about what you're allowing to steal your time and if it's worth it. Now, there will be emergencies that come into play here. There will be things that must get done, and so you're going to have to take some pivots. That's okay as long as you follow this one rule. If you erase, you must replace. So if during lead generation something sprung up and said, I need to address this now, that's okay. But you then must replace that activity that you erased off of your calendar somewhere else in your week. Make sure it gets done. Now,
wow, you're speaking directly to me. I had a meeting I had to do a house showing, and my teenager had, an emergency, so I had to cancel it. So right now I was thinking, well, should I ignore that emergency next time and let him learn from his lessons? But now you're saying it's okay to cancel it, but replace it and reschedule it. So
bingo. You said there was a certain amount of time to get a certain amount of activity done to get an overall goal done. So by erasing it, it's okay because that's going to happen. But you also said there was a certain amount of time that needed to be put in. So go and put that time elsewhere, right? Now, here's the other thing about this, ladies and gentlemen. It is about creating habits here, not just getting to do items done. You see, one of the other things that the one thing also teaches you about is how much time and focus needs to be put into forming habits. Because at the end of the day, once you've now formed habits in your business, there's not as much mental energy and willpower required to get these things done. Forming a habit requires consistency and time over task. So what we need to be thinking about is, as you're mapping out your weekly and monthly goals, don't make too many pivots on things. Ask yourself, have I turned this to-do item into a pivot? Or have I turned this to-do item into a habit? You see, habits will sometimes, in many cases, and this is from scientific research that has been written in the one thing, take 66 days of doing the activity straight. No, not 5 days a week. 66 days on a 7-day week calendar. Now, does this mean in order for me to lead generate, I need to be lead generating 7 days a week? No. If you lead generate on a 5-day per week calendar, do that, but do it over a 66-day calendar. Hopefully that's making sense to all of you. What habits do you need to be forming in your business now? And what do you need to be getting really consistent about in order to making sure you're on track for your business and personal goals? So those 5 items, I would say, would be the biggest best practices for you to implement into time blocking. Yeah, Alyssa.
I was going to say, one of the habits that not only do we need to build good habits, we got to break bad habits. And my bad habit was making excuses. Oh, I didn't do it because of this. I didn't do it because of that, So,
yep.
Because, I committed to calling like 50 expired this weekend and I didn't do it. So I was like, well, I had an emergency, But I don't know that anybody else makes excuses like I did. But
Well, and see, some of you might have heard of a training called Bold. It's a training that Keller Williams hosts, and in that training, what it says is, I mean, naturally, your brain is going to have a first thought, and for many of you, that first thought might be a negative thought. It's going to be one that gives you an excuse, an out. It's not about that first thought, though, right? That's what we call your drunk monkey or your monkey mind talking to you, trying to protect you, trying to get you to stay in your comfort zone, right? Keep you from doing what's needed to grow and have your business thrive. It's about that second thought. And heck, I would say that for you, if that's something you're struggling with, man, this first thought, it's always an excuse. That's okay. Give yourself permission to do that. But do you immediately, and for the next 66 days, do you track when you have that first thought and immediately follow it up with a second thought that spins the story and helps you think of something that would be more productive? Somebody cuts you off as you're driving. Your immediate thought's going to want to be a cuss word, a finger, a gesture, right? A mean thought or a negative thought about that individual. Can you immediately follow that up with asking yourself, man, you know what? Maybe that person has a pregnant wife at home that's needing them to get picked up so that they can go to the hospital. Maybe that person has somebody in the hospital already that's really sick and needs some support. Right. So it's about, so again, comes back to the setting the habits. I'd say the first thought is, what are the habits that you need to break or form? And then getting really intentional about consistency. So let's talk about one more thing. It's a little bit of a bonus subject for all of you. And this is much less a piece of content and something to teach, as it is something for you to reflect on and speak openly about right now, which is, the beautiful thing about the 411 is that it gives you a list of responsibilities and strategies to implement into your business. And it gives you an opportunity to then time block for those activities and making sure it gets done. Here's what we also know, though. The most successful individuals have a level of accountability to those tasks and strategies getting done. So my question to all of you, and now is your opportunity to start speaking openly about it. What does ideal accountability look like for you in getting your 411 completed on a weekly basis? Who here would like to share an idea for themselves on how they see accountability looking like for them?
Partner.
I'll go.
Oh, go ahead.
Keep yourself accountable to your time blocking and the schedule that you set for yourself. And also the huge takeaway that I had for that was, if you erase, you must replace. I find myself, if something comes up and I didn't have time to do it, I don't fill that time that I missed by doing what I needed to do. And so replacing, I feel like, is huge in keeping yourself accountable, because it's so easy to say, oh, well, this came up, I guess I just don't have to do it anyway. But if you hold yourself to that time block and you replace that time that you lost, I feel like you're going to help keep yourself accountable. That's just my takeaway.
Okay, so I got personal accountability there, right? Okay. Yeah, Edie or Alyssa, it looks like both of you guys were unmuted.
So I listened to this audio, Rookie of the Year, and they said, one of the ways to succeed the first year and is to find a good accountability partner, someone who's going to sharpen you. You're both pushing yourself to the max, and then you have to answer to the other person, did you do it? Did you do it? So is that a good plan? Accountability partner?
It's a good plan if you and your partner are committed to it.
Yeah. We're not teaming up with a flake. So,
and I mean, how many of you, started up an accountability session or a partnership and it probably fizzled after 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month? Has that happened to anybody?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Right. If both you and that individual are not committed to that relationship and understanding why you're doing that, that's what tends to get in the way of it. Right. So it's getting really clear and making sure that we're both accountable to what we're going to do here.
I mean, but we can build up momentum and then graduate from needing each other, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and so here's one of my pieces would be, never lose accountability from another individual. It's human nature for us to not like the idea of letting other people down. In fact, in many cases, some of us are okay with burning ourselves in order to keep other people warm, but you just will not let other people down, right? Edie, what's your thought?
Yeah, I think also it's kind of like what all of you are saying, hold yourself accountable, but I think hold people around you accountable for your schedule as well. For example, like with me, it would be, Ralph, Edgar, Charmaine, anyone that I work closely with, not to let them break my calendar. Maybe they know that every Wednesday at 2 p.m., this is what I do. So don't call me Tuesday, Wednesday, 2 p.m. or whatever. So I think just make sure that people around you in your office or your team or whatever it is, understand your schedule and how important that is so they respect that time as well.
Bingo. Communicate your schedule.
There's also respecting your own schedule. I mean, one of the biggest things I have personally am having a problem with, especially with all the quarantine and everything else, is respecting my own schedule. And that is where I am really struggling right now, is respecting that boundary of my own schedule and keeping it.
Yeah, and this is exactly why we're having this conversation around accountability, right? Because it's one thing to create the schedule, create the plan, and I've met so many professional planners, right? Where I could build a really good plan, but the implementation, it comes from some level of accountability. That accountability in its best form will come in the form of other individuals. So let me tell you guys about something really quickly here. If we haven't talked about this before, it's called a story model, right? And I want you guys to think about this. Here's how the story model works. And it relates highly to the conversation we're having around accountability. Something happens to all of us. I want you to think about, you're going to go and implement your business plan right away. And probably part of your business plan is going to be implementing some form of lead generation that you've either done before or maybe you haven't done, and you're going to go and try it out. So let's take, for instance, some of you have a business plan that's going to focus on cold calling, because that's what's going on right now. Due to social distancing, I have to cold call. So something happens, but I don't like cold calling. I don't like it because I just feel like people are going to cuss me out. So I start my cold calling, and sure enough, on my third call, guess what happens, Paulette? I get cussed out. So then what happens is we create a story. We then immediately say, oh my gosh, cold calling doesn't work. This is exactly why I didn't do it in the past. I shouldn't be doing this. I need to get away from it. Cold calling is a waste of my time. You see, after you create that story, you then right away subconsciously gather evidence that supports what you're describing to yourself. You think about all the times that you've received a cold call and you hated it. You think about all the other times that you might have tried cold calling in the past and you had a similar outcome. And so you support this story that you've already started telling yourself. What's even worse is then you go and start talking to other people, seeking validation to the story that you're telling yourself. Oh my gosh, Paula, you'll never believe what happened. I was cold calling and this person cussed me out and told me I need to run into traffic, and that don't I have anything better to do with my time than just cold call? And then Paulette's going to tell me, yeah, this is exactly why I don't cold call. Ugh, it's such a bad time to do it. And as a result of that validation, as a result of that evidence that I've thought to support that story, now I'm going to form some sort of habit or make some sort of decision that's going to be lasting. And the question is this decision or habit that I'm about to form and make going to be productive or detracting from my productivity as a business? And in this case, what is the habit or decision that I'm about to make in this example?
You're not going to cold call it.
You're not going to cold call ever again, right? And we know that that is a leg that people have used to build their business on. So the question is, when it comes to accountability to the plan that you're setting, who are you surrounding yourself, and are they validating the stories that you're telling? Or are they pushing back on you and keeping you focused on the plan that you've set out? Are they making sure that you're focused on this light at the end of the tunnel and that you're actually going out there to live your biggest and best life possible? That would be my suggestion to you when it comes to creating accountability. Don't look for yes people. Don't look for people that are going to keep you comfortable. In fact, I want to look for people that I can't stand the way they communicate with me. They make me feel rough. Or you know why that you feel that way? It's because you're growing. It's because you're growing. So look out for that when you're identifying accountability to your business plan. The only thing that I will tell you guys in regards to this training here, the one thing that's left is, first off, thank you for going on this 2-part journey with me to helping you build a bigger business and getting really intentional during this time when A lot of you might have lost that intentionality to your business. Understandably so. There were bigger things to focus on. But the only other thing that I would tell you is, and let me get this thing up here really quickly so I could show you, is go and build a business that's focused on purpose, on operations, and really, really intense focus. What I will be committing to all of you as a result of this training is I'm going to send you a copy of the 411. It's going to map out, like I said, 4 different columns. So that way we're not just focused on your business goals over the next 12 months. At Keller Williams, we believe in our values are God, family, then business, right? So we do it in that order. Are you spiritually good with yourself? It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a faith, but are you spiritually taking care of yourself? And then have you taken care of your family? Followed by where is your business at? So the 411 tool that I'm going to send you coincides with those values in that order.
Daniel, can we take bold even though we belong to another company?
Absolutely. In fact, we would encourage it so that way you can get an idea of all of the mindset that's required to succeed in this business, because many other companies we found, they don't give that mindset training. So yes, yes, yes. I'll send you more details on that.
Yeah, I love my company, but I'm always open to maybe if it's the same message delivered in a different format, it'll finally stick. You know?
Sometimes that's what's required. Yeah, yeah. And what's cool about Bold is that they dropped the price to $99. So it's pretty interesting. So I'll send you the details and make sure that you have a path to sign up.
Awesome. And is it online?
It is all online now. Yes.
Awesome. Before we go, I guess I'll wait till the end, but I'd like to go over this business plan, like just 5 steps that one of the top agents in my company said. Maybe I'll just share it so that everybody else can hear, and you tell me if those are great formulas or maybe swipe one for another. Is that okay?
Yeah, let me see. Are there any other questions before we move to that?
I actually have one. Sorry, go ahead.
We'll do Kat first.
Okay. When you went over breaking up into, hold on, I gotta find it. When you're breaking up into the 4 sections.
Yes.
Why is job and business separate?
Job is what you do in your business. Business is what you do on your business. So I want you to think about your job as the daily responsibilities of lead generation, lead follow-up, what you have to do. Your business, I want you guys to start thinking about your real estate business on a much more global scale. What does your business need? Does it need to increase its database size? Do you need to bring in other individuals into it? So in your business are the activities that you're doing in it every day, but maybe part of your business goals for the year might be you're bringing in an admin, you're bringing in a buyer specialist, things like that. Thank you for asking that. Paulette, what's your question?
Sorry, just hadn't unmuted.
Oh, gotcha. Rizal, I saw you had unmuted.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you factor, when you're figuring out your financial goals, right, to kind of break down how many homes you have to sell, do you take into account the taxes that you have to pay?
So your taxes, yes. The rule of thumb, according to our model, is to account for 40% taxes. You don't have to do that. It could be 30%. Here's the reason why we don't necessarily teach that is because, one, it's an accounting thing. And we don't want to go down that hole. More so, number 2, though, is from an expense standpoint, and partner with your accountant on this, that could actually change a lot of things. So depending on how much you're spending on expenses, you might not have to necessarily change your goals too much. So I'll leave it at that, but that's I think many of you can know where I'm going with that. As in, you'll be able to net, you'll probably still be able to net based on the fact that many of your expenses will be written off. All right, any other questions before we move back to Alyssa? All right, Alyssa, talk to us.
Okay, so this is from one of the top producing agents in my company. He says, spend at least 27 hours per week prospecting, okay? And he says, do at least 3 open houses a week, 6 hours per open house, including the first hour to set up and close up, and a minimum of 25 letters a week, whether you're writing note cards or you're sending something, but just send something. And you call 3 to 5 people per day. And then on top of that, you do 2 a week door knocking, 2 times a week door knocking, and pair up with another agent. Last but not least, if you're new and your database is not huge, you do rentals, because you help them, you put them in their database when they're ready to convert, and some of them can convert right away because you can see their credit scores, you can see how much they're making, and ask them, why don't you want to buy? And so, is that a good plan or something I should replace to be in that 20%?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that since I'm teaching this class. So I'll tell you, first off, is always take advice from other agents with a grain of salt. And let me explain why. It is not that the advice is bad. By no means is that bad advice, especially because that's what he's built his business off of. I mean, look at any of these other squares in here. I would say if somebody's telling you, take the advice from me as a grain of salt as well. And here's the reason why. Many bits of advice, what it's centered around is do. What you need to do in order to achieve what you want. Here's what we learned. In this business, the do is not as important as the be. We have a saying in this business which goes be, do, achieve. You want to achieve something, most people, they want to talk about what you need to do. Stop having that conversation first and start having the conversation of who you need to be. Because the reason that individual is so successful is not just because of what he's doing and what he's advising others to do. It's because of a version of him that he's become that's also emulating the results he's getting, right? So he's a confident individual. He's an early bird. He takes his business seriously. He thinks like a businessman. He practices this, right? He does all these, he is this version of himself that then informs him of what he needs to do. So get really clear on who you need to be, Alyssa, and this goes to anyone else. Who do you need to be first in order to do the things that your business plan is telling you need to do to achieve the results that you're looking for? So that's part one of my long-winded answer. The part two would be, I love most of the things on that list. A couple caveats that I would say is a 6-hour open house. Keep this in mind with open houses, is that open houses themselves are a very inefficient way of generating leads for a business. And I say that because open houses themselves, you're going to have to put out a lot of signs to generate a lot of traffic. And then you sit there and you wait for people to come in. The open houses themselves aren't a really efficient way of generating business. What you do to promote that open house is what's most efficient. So if you're going to block out a certain amount of time, make sure it's more in the prospecting activities of cold calling, door knocking. Don't just drop off flyers, but that's the gold, is what you're doing leading up to that open house. I know very successful agents that are hosting 30-minute to 1-hour open houses. Why? Because the open house itself is not as important to them as what they're doing to promote that open house. So don't want to confuse any of you. Just know that the more important strategy is what you're doing to promote that open house, because that's where you're having the dialogue. And then with rentals, yeah, I mean, I don't want to deter anybody away from doing from doing rentals. Just keep in mind your cost per hour, right? And if you want to get your cost, your dollar per hour that you earn in this business up, transition as quickly as you can to helping buyers and sellers as often as you can, right?
Yeah.
Some people from a financial standpoint just can't do that right away, and I understand that.
Very valuable. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I am not a huge supporter of paper calendars. Go and digitize your stuff. Jeez, Edie. All right. Any other thoughts or questions?
Well, I'm looking forward to your next training.
Beautiful. Love that. What other feedback or mahas or ahas from today?
If you missed, you got to replace.
If you erase, you must replace. Yep. What else?
You need someone to help you be accountable, because not everyone is capable of being accountable to themselves.
Bingo. And don't look for somebody that you just like. Look for somebody, most importantly, that's going to not be a validator, especially when that story is going to hold you back. They are the last line of defense before you create a habit or form some sort of decision. So make sure it's somebody that's going to propel you forward and make sure you're implementing productive behaviors.
Couple of things. Number one, thank you, because it's important. Like for us, we have an annual goal. but I think it's important to look at it monthly and even weekly and break it down and make sure you're at, where you need to be. So I love, breaking it down, as you said, think about it weekly, think about it monthly. Okay. And then also I think it was Alyssa, I'm not sure who was giving the list of that agent. I agree with you that, and also what works for one agent, the exact same thing may not work for the other person. So find what works with you and stick to it. All good points, but it may not work for you just because it works for someone else.
Yep. Comes back to that be to achieve, right? So not to say that the advice is bad or wrong. It's just understand that there's a be conversation to have along with that. Yeah, Brendan.
A big takeaway I have is to make sure that the story model doesn't implement and form habits for you. I've had some crazy things happen during cold calling and following up on Facebook leads. And if you let those, hold you back, you're going to form bad habits around it. And so I really feel like making sure you're not falling into the story cycle where you are creating those bad habits based off one thing that happened to you. I think that's you can use that in a lot of parts of your life.
Bingo.
Completely agree, Brandon. Completely agree.
Personal and professional, right? Yep.
And I'm guilty of it for sure. I'm definitely guilty of it, but I'm getting better at realizing when it's happening so I can break the cycle. And I think that is super important.
Beautiful. You're getting intentional there. So I love that. Awesome. Let me just tell you guys what's next. So first off would be that tomorrow we do have one of our top agents, Rob Pistone, that'll be teaching about converting expireds and for sale by owners. So if that's on your business plan, now that you've figured out the strategies you need to go after, you probably want to be on that training tomorrow at 11 o'clock. If it's not on your business plan and you sit on that class or other classes that similarly are not on your business plan, now you are sitting and learning and you're gaining knowledge for learning's sake, not earning's sake. Go and sit in classes that are actually going to be relevant to your business plan. So that's the first thing. Also, this Thursday, I'll be hosting our all partners meeting for our office. It's not just a meeting for Keller Williams agents. And it's not just a meeting where we talk Keller Williams stuff. We're going to break down the market. We're going to give some training for sales. We're going to make sure that every agent that's on that call learns something to go and grow their business with. So if any of you want to attend either of those, just go to kellerwilliamsvip.com and you'll see all of the links for that. Outside of that, thank you so much for allowing me an opportunity to help you grow your businesses. Know that I'm available for free consultations. All you have to do is go to meetmahabir.com. Again, that's meetmahabir, MAHABIR.com. And you'll see my entire schedule and you can book yourself a consultation session for any time this week, this month, or this year. I'm happy to support you any way I can. Thank you all so much. Have a great day and let's keep in touch.
Daniel, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. You'll definitely email those things out today, right?
Oh, yeah, that'll be out today along with this recording. Yes.
And the bold.
That's right. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
You're welcome, Melissa. Bye-bye.